Hey everyone, welcome back to another weekly PC gaming news recap. This week we'll talk about the day before, which was scheduled to come out next month but has been delayed until next year. We also have some new information about how much time Riot expects to be playing their upcoming MMO. There was a new update for V Rising. We've got some leaked Skull and Bones footage to discuss, along with updates on Sons of the Forest, Bitcraft, and TERA. Let's just go ahead and jump into the news. First up this week, the bewildering saga of the upcoming zombie survival MMO the day before just took another sharp turn. After months of silence, they announced this week that the game will be moving from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5, and as a result, they wouldn't hit their target June 2022 launch. So they've made the decision to delay the game and now plan to release on March 1st, 2023. Now, delaying a game isn't that uncommon, especially in recent years. We've been seeing this happen quite a lot. I think the strange part to me, though, is the decision to upgrade engines being announced less than 2 months prior to the release date. This seems a bit last minute of a decision to be making here and almost feels like a convenient excuse. Like maybe it's possible there are other reasons they're wanting to delay the game, like say, I don't know, it's not quite ready for launch, but they say this was a result of millions of people adding the day before to their wish list, making it one of the most anticipated games in the world, and so they are making the transition to a more advanced and adapted open worlds engine that will make the gameplay of the day before even more fantastic. Now, from what I understand, shifting from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5 isn't an impossibly difficult task and can be done in the timeline that they're proposing. But again, this is just another kind of crazy twist in the strange tale of this game's development and the studio behind it. I mean, there are just a multitude of red flags and they seem to be stacking up one after the other, most of which I have covered in pretty extensive detail in prior videos on this game. I think what was almost most interesting to learn of all, though, throughout this is the fact that the day before is actually the #1 most wish-listed game on Steam right now, which once again proves that there is still plenty of appetite for a multiplayer zombie survival game. And hey, I am in that camp myself. Like, I'm not confident that this will be the game to deliver, but I am still certain there's plenty of room in that genre for new games to emerge and do very well. And that's part of the reason why I've been following this game's development so closely, because like the idea of this game sounds really cool. Are they going to execute with the day before? Well, we'll be finding out early next year. Hopefully we get in the next couple of months some actual extensive gameplay footage and some further details about the game, because everything has been pretty clearly vertical slice that they've showcased so far. But regardless, I am anxiously awaiting more information about this game. Another game that I'm really excited and looking forward to seeing and hearing more about is the upcoming Riot MMO in the Runeterra universe, and we got some more information this week specifically around their design philosophy in terms of player investment and time investment in their game. Now, this is a common point of discussion with games in general nowadays, but specifically with MMOs, in terms of like how demanding they are of your time and how much content they have in general. So Greg Street, which is the EP of Riot's MMO project, has talked about this matter in a lengthy Twitter thread. He said, "This sentiment comes out when players may not be having fun in the moment, but feel like they have to log in or risk falling behind or letting their friends down. The real heart of the problem, IMO, comes when players say they are bored, they did the raids and the alts and the economy and whatever else, and they kind of want something else to do. This is especially true if they are paying by the hour or by the month. If you add too much to do, then you're asking most progression-focused players to just play more, but if you make the content really optional feeling, like, hey, why don't you go finish that low-level quest you never ran, then it doesn't feel like real content. This is the kind of thing we will have to playtest the heck out of, but if I had to guess, we will probably come in on the side of not having enough to do." He basically then goes on to say that they don't expect you to be constantly playing this game, and they assume that you will be taking breaks when there are lulls in the content and coming back after there is some major update. And this is the sort of design philosophy that we have seen in many popular games. This is a design philosophy in Final Fantasy XIV. It's a design philosophy in sort of MMO Destiny 2. I mean, but developers of both those games have basically echoed what they're talking about potentially being the case here. Now, he then goes on to say that the TLDR of this is that they want to respect player time. However, that we shouldn't misread and imagine that this is going to be a small game. It will not be a small game. It will be a very large game. And the reason we're going to have to wait so long until we get to actually play it is because it is a large game. But at the same time, they want to respect our time. And then he goes on to say that, hey, if your friends play this and say that they're bored, just tell them we didn't expect this to be a second or third job and maybe they should go do something else, basically. It's a really interesting line to toe when it comes to games, and specifically MMOs, which traditionally is a genre that people want to have the option to invest a lot of time in. And trust me, I've been there with many games over the years. To me, what he's saying basically reads like they are building a big game and there will be a lot of stuff to do, but it won't require huge daily time sinks over the long term in order to feel like you are keeping up with progression. So if you want to reach max level and gear up to the strongest items available and then move on, you can do so without having to play 4 or more hours every day for months and months on end. But if you really like playing the game and you want to keep going, there will be other things to do to keep you busy. They just won't be playing directly into the FOMO of power progression. You won't feel like you're not going to be keeping up with people if you're not playing every day. And honestly, this kind of reminds me a bit of Guild Wars 2, a game that's fresh on my mind because I've been playing it recently, ever since the most recent expansion. I've sunk a lot of time in, and it's interesting because like gearing is pretty straightforward and there's only a small difference in power if you decide to even jump from the exotic to the ascended gear, which basically what that ends up meaning is you can use gear right off the auction house that you purchase for fairly affordably and do a majority of the game's content. Now, the upper echelons of PvE, for example, you'll want to make the jump to ascended. It certainly is helpful, but 99% of what there is to do in that game can be done with literally gear that you buy from the player auction house. I quite like this approach. It really, I think, gave me a sense of freedom in terms of what I want to spend my time doing. Although on the flip side, this system can also make you feel a little bit directionless. So I definitely think there's a balance to be struck here. I'm not hoping that Riot goes precisely with what Guild Wars 2 does. I'm not saying that at all, but I do think there are some positives to be learned here. Another game that I'm super excited for is V Rising. Since I first heard about this, it was one of my most anticipated upcoming releases of this year, and I just learned that they have announced plans to launch or into early access this month. So we're going to be playing this very, very soon. This was a pleasant surprise for me. A bit bummed that I had found this out after uploading my May's top games list, but oh well, not a big deal. Anyways, V Rising is an open world vampire sandbox survival game from Stunlock Studios, creators of Battlerite and Bloodline Champions. And having really enjoyed both of those games personally, I am super keen to play their next project. Everything we've seen so far looks great to me. The setting, the visuals, the combat, it all really seems on point. The basics are this: you're going to be playing as a vampire. You will wake up weak and with nothing, and then you venture out into this gothic wilderness, collecting resources, preying on helpless villagers, and growing in power. And then from there, you'll be acquiring stronger gear, unlocking new abilities, and combating a variety of threats, from basic enemies in the wilderness to these holy warriors, or even trying to avoid the sun. And there will be massive PvE boss battles against all sorts of fantasy beasts. And then as well, there's going to be PvP for those interested. There are servers offering that as an option. And all around, I just think this game looks super solid. At this point, there are several minutes of gameplay footage through their various trailers. Everything I see looks pretty cool, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they deliver and actually stick with the game this time around. So this past week, they did release a brand new video and a dev blog that showcased the castle building feature. So those resources that you gather, they can be used to construct your very own vampire stronghold. The castles will be housing your coffin, which is basically your respawn location, and they are also where you're going to go to craft items and upgrade your character. And there are going to be systems in place where you'll have to defend your castle from AI threats or from other players if you're into the PvP. I think this game looks great. I am super pumped to play it, and it's going to be coming to Steam Early Access very soon on Tuesday, May 17th. Looking forward to it. Ubisoft's pirate sailing game Skull and Bones isn't dead, believe it or not. Although this was first announced all the way back in 2017 and has just been mired with development issues, the ship has not sunk. It's just been taking a while to get to port. You get the theming there? Anyway. This week, several minutes of gameplay footage leaked online, which showed off a bit of the Skull and Bones tutorial. In it, they go over some of the basics of the game. They say that you're going to start your journey as an underdog, whose goal is to become the most infamous pirate to sail the seas. But before setting sail, you need to stock up your ship with rations and cargo. There's going to be some customization for you and your crew. And then you go out onto the waters and do things. You complete contracts, explore, plunder, do treasure hunts. All of this will level you up, or raise your infamy as they call it, which opens up new opportunities, letting you craft a larger variety of ship types and ship sizes. Ship combat is going to be the core focus of the game, so you'll be attempting to sink or board enemy ships and plunder their loot. Also, you have to do things like manage your crew morale, manage the integrity of your ship, and have to deal with other player pirates on the waters. Now, after the leak, Ubisoft posted a teaser for the game on their Twitter account. What's funny about this was their first post in like 2 years, which really makes you wonder if this was just damage control or if the leak was planned just to get people talking about the game, which is what's happening right now in this video. Anything's possible, but either way, yes, this game is still coming. Skull and Bones is not dead, and it looks like we're going to be seeing and hearing more about the game very, very soon. The highly anticipated sequel to The Forest got an update this week. The game now has its own Steam page and a release date scheduled for October. There's no specific day, just the month of October, but we know it's coming this fall. This open world survival horror game looks to build upon what made the original so beloved, offering total freedom to go and do whatever you want, more variety of enemies with plenty of creepy, spooky demons to battle. There will be more building and crafting options, changes to the seasons and weather effects, and the return of co-op gameplay. Gotta say, this thing looks absolutely fantastic. I had always heard a lot of good things about The Forest, but it kind of stayed under my radar and I never played it myself. I feel like I have to now, just in anticipation of this game, because yeah, this looks really, really good. And given how well regarded the original was, I assume there's a ton of excitement about this, so that's pretty cool. I'm gonna be keeping my eye on it and expect to hear more from me in the future. I also got an update on Bitcraft, the sandbox MMO that was said to be have a focus on a variety of playstyles, from things like farming, hunting, crafting, city building, and social strategy, instead of emphasizing what most MMOs do, which is the combat alone. I think this game has a really neat look to it, and it really caught my eye when it was first revealed last September, but things were kind of fairly quiet in the months ever since. However, a recent article posted over on Massively OP pointed me to some updates from the developers in the form of a recent Q&A. Now, in this, they touched on a few interesting topics. They were asked if the game was going to be solo friendly. So they are going to be really accommodating to solo play, but still having group dynamics and different play styles that will really encourage group play, which is pretty cool. They also touch on a few other things like climates and biomes, the gathering and trading systems, grouping, vehicles, as well as the game's map. Also, a couple of months ago, this article pointed me to another dev blog in which they discuss a little bit of information about long-term progression. They said here that the whole point of an end game is to make it so players eventually achieve similar levels of progression, i.e. eliminate progress disparity, but the fun of the genre is derived from players continuing to make meaningful progress and not eliminate that progress disparity, and in turn, this creates this contradiction. So instead of recognizing this unresolvable contradiction, MMOs have attempted to have their cake and eat it too. With Bitcraft, they're going to try to avoid this problem by creating long-term progression while also allowing players at different stages of that progression to still play together, and adding content not just to the very end game, but also to the mid game, and letting players experience all of that content. So this thing looks pretty interesting. I do hope, even though they're saying combat is not a primary focus, that it is still a focus. That is something that, you know, I enjoy the combat element of MMOs, and I don't want this to just be a game about gathering and talking with other people. But on the flip side, the market could probably do with more games in this direction than in the traditional MMO direction, right? So I'm interested to see more either way. And finally here, a couple of weeks ago, we touched on the announced upcoming closure of action combat MMO TERA, a result of the game's developer deciding to no longer support the title. Now, in the lead up to this though, they've got a few farewell events planned. Basically, there's a boosting event going on right now where they're letting you earn triple loot and gold for doing certain in-game activities, to which I say at this point, oh, okay, like, why not just give everyone still playing infinite of whatever they want? Because, you know, the game's shutting down in not very long from now. It's actually scheduled to close on June the 30th. This seems very strange. Like, hey guys, we're giving you triple rewards for doing stuff. The game's shutting down, so what does it even matter? What does any of this even matter? Anyways, I don't know. I don't even know who I'm talking to here because according to SteamDB, there's like 100 people playing this game. But TERA is just such an interesting game because it's so well regarded in a lot of ways, but it also clearly didn't hold up and didn't maintain player interest over time. And it's sad to me that this thing's going away. So I'll say this week what I said last time we talked about this. It is disappointing that there is no way to carry this torch forward and keep the game going. And I really wish, for the sake of games preservations, that we had a system in which this could work and this game could still run, even if it's just 100 people still playing it. It's just a shame that the realities of business and maintaining servers make it so that this is not the case. Okay, and before we go, a couple of things I want to talk about. Some of the newly playable games, Warhammer 40k, Chaos Gate, Demon Hunters. This is the 40k take on the XCOM formula. This game reviewed decently well. It just launched a couple days ago. It's got an 83 on OpenCritic and an 80 on Metacritic, although interestingly enough, it is sitting at a mixed rating on Steam. Now, I briefly jumped in for like 2 hours myself. The game seemed fine. It seemed functional, but really lacking any good polish and felt a little dated in a lot of ways. But in terms of the gameplay, it felt and played like an XCOM game. It had a lot of the management systems and the turn-based combat, and it seemed fine. I don't know if I'm in the mood to sink any more time into it, as there are other games that I'm more interested in playing right now. And then also we have got Ethereal Echoes of Yore. This is a top-down, old-school inspired MMO. It just went into open alpha. You can opt in on the Steam page and you'll be granted access, and it's going to be running for a couple of weeks until around the end of the month. This is interesting. It's an alpha and it's free to try, so I wanted to mention it for you guys. And with that, we will be wrapping up this week's video. Thank you as always so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoy the update, and I will see you next week for another This Week in PC Gaming News. Take it easy, guys. See ya.